Alright, so I'm going to walk you through Prove the Perimeter in case you left early or you didn't get the notes or you just want to recap this to just have a better understanding. So the paper looks like this at the top, and one thing that you were supposed to find out was the perimeter of the triangle is 20 inches, and so you want to know the length of the missing side. So one thing that we want to note is, what is the perimeter? The perimeter is the distance around the edge of a shape. So somebody in my other class said the outside edge, and I agree. I like that definition. So if you just wanted to write perimeter and then you wanted to write outside edge, that would be perfect, because that's what we're really talking about. Okay, and so when I look at this shape, I see that I have a side over here, one on the bottom, but I'm missing this piece. And so I know that I have 3 sides, and so one way to figure out the perimeter of a triangle is to take the side, add it to the other side, and the third side, and you're going to get your perimeter. So I would say side plus side plus side is going to give you the perimeter. So let's think about the pieces that we have. What do we have? Well, we know one of the sides to be 6.5, or we could write it in decimal form, 6.5. We know that the base, this bottom piece, is 4, so I'm going to write that as 4. We do not know the third side. That's what we're trying to find. And we happen to know the perimeter is 20. So the perimeter is our total, meaning our answer cannot go over 20. So one thing that you may want to do is you may have wanted to say, hey, if I'm trying to find this missing part, I can use subtraction. I can say 20 minus 4 is 16, and 16 minus 6 is 10, and 10 minus another half would give me 9.5. So this missing piece would be 9.5. Now that's not the only way you could have done it. You could have said, well, 6.5 plus 4 is 10.5. And if you have 20 minus 10.5, you would get 9.5. So either way you do this, you get 9.5 as your answer. Okay? So the one thing that I want you to remember when you're doing this, when you're thinking about perimeter, is I want you to think about what pieces you have and what is needed to solve. I would call this a formula, something that you use to help you plug in information that you know and what you don't know. Alright, so I'm going to scroll up to this next one and I'm going to read it out loud. It says the combined perimeter of a hexagon and a square is 68 inches. The model shows the dimensions of a regular hexagon. What is the perimeter of the square in inches? So I'm going to go back up here to some information. The first thing that I see is the word combined. The combined perimeter. Combined means that we're putting two things together. So when we say combined perimeter of the hexagon and the square, that means these two together are going to equal 68 inches. What I do know is that a hexagon is a 6-sided figure and that a square is a 4-sided figure. And a square has special attributes, meaning that it's exactly equal on all 4 sides. It also tells me that this is a regular hexagon. So a regular hexagon means all sides and angles are equal or congruent, whichever word you want to use. So if I know that we have a regular hexagon and I know one of the sides to be 6, then what do I know about all the sides? I know all of the sides are 6. And so I could easily find out the perimeter by saying 6 sides times a measurement of 6 is going to give me 36 inches. That still doesn't help me find the square. But here's what I do know. I know the combined perimeter, the hexagon plus the square, is going to give me the perimeter that they gave me. And I happen to know that the hexagon perimeter is now 36. I don't know the square perimeter, but I do know the total. And so I want you to think for just a minute, how could I get that answer? Well, that's right. If I take 36 and I subtract it from 68, that will end up giving me 32. And 32 plus 36 will give me 68. So that means that the perimeter of the square is 32 inches. Now, if I wanted to take this one step farther, and I wanted to know, well, what is the length of each side? Well, if I know all the sides are equal, and I know the total is 32, I could take 32 and divide it by 4, and I would get 8 inches each. So each side is worth 8 inches. Okay, and let's go to our last one. The one here at the top. It says the perimeter of a rectangular blanket is 8 yards. The length of the blanket is 2.5 yards. What is the width in yards of the blanket? So it says draw a representation of the blanket and label and then solve. And since we do not have a picture, I would expect you to draw a picture. So when we're talking about the blanket, we're talking about a rectangular shape. So that means that I'm going to take this shape right here and I'm going to draw it. And I'm going to label what I know. It says that the perimeter, remember the perimeter is the outside rim, is 8 inches. And that the length is 2.5. So if the length is 2.5 yards, and I'm just going to call this the length today. Remember, don't get too worked up on the length and the width, because if you turn it this way, it could be the length, but if I turn my paper the other direction, this could be the length. So as long as I recognize that one side is going to be the length and the other one is going to be the width, it doesn't really matter which one I call which. We're trying to find the width, so I'm going to leave that there. And what I know about rectangles is if the top is 2.5, then I also know that the bottom is 2.5. And very quickly I think to myself, I know some pieces. To find the perimeter, we need to know side plus side plus side plus side gives me the perimeter. And if I know the perimeter is 8, I'm going to fill in with that first. I know 2.5 here plus 2.5 here plus this will give me 8. So now I've got to think, well, what could I put there? What could I do? Well, I could put 2.5 and 2.5 together. And if I add 2.5 and 2.5, I will end up getting 5 exactly, 5. Now that still leaves 2 measurements that I don't have. But if I subtract the 5 from the total 8, that will leave 3. And that doesn't mean 3 for each, that means 3 for both. So basically I need to take the number 3, I need to cut it in half to get an answer. Lucky for me, I do know how to divide that. So 3 divided by 2 is going to be 1, the remainder of 1. We don't get remainders in 5th grade, so I add a decimal, I add a 0, I pop up my decimal, I drop my 0, and I divide again. How many groups of 2 are in 10? 5. That will give me 10. So that's 1.54 each side. Now if I do a quick check, I can say, well, 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8, and it works out. So if we want to know what is the width in yards of the blanket, we know the width is 1.5 yards. All right, take this paper, fold it in half, and glue it in your journal.